Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my analysis, discussion on the new preview pages for Avatar The Last Airbender Imbalance Part 3. We now have the Google Books preview, which means that we actually get to see a lot of different pages, including pages from much later on in the book. So be aware in this video that there will be spoilers, and I think it more or less includes the last page of the book and some of the big stuff that happens towards the end of the book. Now, it's nowhere near all of the pages from the book. We get like the first 20 or so, and then really it's just a handful of pages from like the rest of the book. It's not really as many as there were in the past. I didn't put too much time into going to every single different Google, proxying from every different country. I just did a few of them, and I think I got a decent selection of pages here. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, let's start off with this. This isn't the Google preview. This is actually the preview that you're just going to see on a lot of the kind of book seller websites. And it features basically just, in terms of new content, just the very first page of the book. So we hadn't seen this page before, in that the preview that we got before from a few weeks back featured everything except like the first page. So here is the actual first page of the book. Why did everyone get so quiet all of a sudden? Toph, you just told Aang he should take Li Ling's bending away. I think we're all a little shocked. What's to be shocked about? Makes perfect sense to me. She's plotting to drive out non-benders who live in Cranefish Town. She hired criminals to blow up my dad's factory, not to mention all those other factories as well. So, Toph presenting her argument at the start of the book. This is the Toph-Katara conflict that we got teased a little bit of. It's interesting. I do wonder over the course of the rest of the book, especially the pages we don't get to see, how much more of this there is in the book, because as we'll see, it looks like Toph is doing other stuff for a large part of the book, but we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, this is just a quick one, not even part of the Google preview, but you can get a sense that this is the first page, so pretty interesting. And then yeah, here is the Google preview. So I'll leave a link to this in the description below if you want to check it out, mess around with it and stuff like that. Again, to do that, all you have to do is just change the google.ie to like google.com.de, and then, you know, proxy to different countries, see what you can find. I haven't done too much of it here. This one I have up here is the google.ie preview. That's Google Ireland, which is the one it defaults to for me. And as you can see here, we get the early pages of the book. And yeah, so we get some of this stuff. Page 5 is not part of the preview, but page 5 is right there. So yeah, this is where we get the start of the preview that we saw from before. So again, I'm not covering this in too much detail since I already did a video on it before. All of this we have seen. Now here is a bit that the initial preview actually skipped over. So this is cutting over to the other side of the story with Rue and Yaling, the sisters of course. The chi blocking has worn off. I have my bending back. Time to go get mom. And Rue notes that they're probably being held at Earth and Fire Industries. It's guarded by everyone, so we might have to sneak in. But Yaling says, no, I'm not sneaking in anywhere. What we need to do is draw the Avatar and his friends away from the factory. Then we can rescue mom. We can't fight them directly, so we have to come up with another way. And I think I know how. Whatever it takes. But obviously Yaling is much more intense and intent on this than Rue. So Rue's doubts beginning to come into mind even more here at the start of the book. I definitely think Rue is probably one of the biggest highlights of Imbalance, especially in terms of the new characters. And as we'll see, we do actually get to see a decent amount of Rue in these preview pages. This is probably one of the other better moments. It's probably my favorite moment between the actual like Team Avatar characters that we've seen from the previews so far. So Katara, looking a bit lost in thought, sitting down. Aang comes over and says, you're always asking if I'm okay, now it's my turn. Are you okay? I'm fine, I just don't agree with what Toph was suggesting. She's not wrong though. Li Ling can't lead a bender supremacist movement if she's a non-bender. Are you really considering taking her bending away? I'm not sure. Li Ling is so determined to hurt people, taking her bending away might be a non-violent way to stop her. And more or less I predicted, I think the response from Katara here, I was more expecting maybe her to say this to Toph in an argument to try and get Toph, you know, do you not realize the magnitude of what you're suggesting? But saying it to Aang here is nice as well. Even though I feel Aang at a base level must understand this, and it kind of feels a little weird just that like Katara is saying this to the last airbender, the person in the world who would like suffer the most from like losing his bending. Then airbending will be gone for good. I feel this is a point that doesn't need to be said to Aang, because I think at the base level he understands it, and for him to be told this by Katara, as much as I think it's a nice moment and it makes sense, it also feels a little bit like, yeah, like I think Aang already gets that he is the last airbender and so on. It's his bending's important to him as well. But anyway, waterbending is a big part of who I am. It's also part of my water tribe culture. If I lost my bending, I'd lose a piece of my identity. Taking away someone's bending might seem non-violent when compared to other options, but is it really? You're destroying a part of someone, and that feels violent to me. Do Li Ling's crimes fit the punishment? Does she deserve to lose a piece of her identity? And they both think about this as Satoru comes in, and then we get them being drawn out to the fire, which is what we saw from the rest of the preview from before. And we see this happening, and then the bit that we didn't see was what's happening back at the factory. So there is a fire going on in the rest of the town, but the factory itself, where Li Ling is being held, is only being guarded by the non-bender guards, because again, the split in the town has happened even with the guards. So non-bender factories have non-bender guards, so these benders are coming in here, and it's going to be a little bit of a mismatched fight. So Sokka and Suki are there though, but they are up against all benders. So here's an interesting fight. Yaling with some tactics here. Take out that girl first. She's a chi blocker. So that's interesting to see Suki get singled out. And yeah, some initial dodging here, but it seems very against the odds here. So Suki has a shield, does some chi blocking initially, but very quickly she does get hit with some earthbending, as does Sokka. And I think this makes sense. They're up against earthbenders. They're always going to use that to their advantage, especially when they have the earth right underneath them. This is probably the biggest mismatch in a way for non-benders is against someone like an earthbender. But yeah, so they get sort of captured here initially. They're taken out of the fight a bit, and I think it makes sense. Yaling is, I think, meant to be presented as a sort of higher level bender than a lot of the other characters. If Yaling wasn't there, I think Sokka and Suki with the rest of the guards could have handled this group, but she is, I think, the turning factor in this fight, in that she put up a decent fight against Toph. I wouldn't say she's quite Toph's level, but she's better than your average bender, and I think that's what she's offering here in this fight. So pretty cool here seeing her skill as she takes people out. And yeah, they take the keys, they get through fairly easily and free Li Ling. So this is about what we expected. Maybe I expected it to maybe take a little bit longer to make it happen over the course of the book, but it makes sense. It was the obvious plot point. You needed to get it out of the way. They have a lot of work to do. So Li Ling has a plan. She's just been freed. They have a plan. And yeah, the failure of the team, they realize that their enemies got one over on them. You know, they've got like cuts and scrapes all over them. Their prisoner has been freed. And yeah, it's not going to be good. Her response to whatever's happened is going to be pretty bad. So they're frightened about what her next move is going to be. So that's the Google.ie preview. I did manage to find a few more pages, so we'll cut over to the next one. This is the Google.com, so the American preview, and through an American proxy, so as if I'm browsing from America. So they get most of the same pages early on, except the very last few. So just before the fight starts, then we cut away. So they skip over about 4 pages that we got previously, but we then get some of these other ones here. So page 56 here is Toph, coming down on a rope here. One guy has fallen to the ground. She comes down. Could be useful. Some other people come in. She metal bends them to block them, and it seems like she's facing off against Yaling here. So big fight, kind of round 2 for them. Their fight in part 2 is kind of interesting. So interesting setup. Then we get Li Ling. Wondering, how did this happen? They knew we were coming. They were prepared. Has there been a leak of information? Yes, there has. Rue has told the plans of Li Ling to the others. So at some point over the course of the book, Li Ling becomes so frustrated with the situation she's in, she actually, to help the situation, the balance of the situation, she actually tells, I suppose, Aang and co. what her mother's up to. And Li Ling is shocked by this betrayal. Why would you betray me and your sister? And yeah, I like to see this passion. This is what I really predicted. This is probably my biggest prediction for this book, was that I think a big character arc for this one is going to be whatever they do with Rue and her finally snapping at all of the kind of backhanded comments against her. She's a non-bender. Her sister and mother are both saying things against non-benders. Do they mean it to her as well? And she finally, has kind of got to the end of that here. So I went along with your plans because no matter how horrible they were, I thought you were trying to protect us. I believed when you said the best way to do that was to drive the non-benders out of Cranefish Town, and we don't quite get to see the rest. So we skip over page 58 to 66. Then we do get to see later on in the book, so Aang in the Avatar state all of a sudden. So some big stuff has obviously happened. Not exactly sure why, but either way, Aang in complete control here. Ices up Li Ling. Katara rushes out. We see Rue has been earthbent into the ground in some way here. And Rue says, do it, it's the only way she'll understand. So Rue wants Aang to take her bending away. Aang is just about to do it, so he's kind of reaching out, that typical like energy bending pose, the bending taking away pose. And Katara makes a similar argument to the argument I think she made to Aang when it came to dealing with Zuko back in The Promise, of effectively make sure you make this big decision, make sure it is your decision, that you are not doing it out of anger or just purely based on emotion, that you're doing it for the right reasons and not just as a kind of reaction to something. And ultimately these words do get through to Aang. He comes out of the Avatar state and decides that he is not going to take her bending away, but he does say, I'm going to keep fighting the poison you've spread in Cranefish Town. You're the same as the pollution on the beach, and I'm not leaving until it's cleaned up. So that's Aang committing to, he's going to be, I suppose, sticking around Cranefish Town. If that's all it is, that's fine. I do wish we had had more of a setup of like, where's Aang going to stay? Is it just that he's going to be traveling around but keep an eye on the area, or what? What was the Air Temple Island bit back, a little bit ago in this series? No mention of that. Either way, still nice enough. He and Katara then just leave. Li Ling just there in ice with Rue. You're a wretched, ungrateful child. Maybe, but you're a terrible mother. So that's a nice moment for Rue. I'm actually, probably the thing I'm most interested of after seeing all these previews is just the extra bits with Rue, to see what gets to this point, the back and forth with her mother and stuff like that. That's probably what I'm most excited for, actually, after seeing these teases and stuff like that. So, yeah, and then clearly at some point in, I suppose, page 70, between 70 and 72, I guess someone comes over to arrest her. I can't see them just basically, oh yeah, she'll just melt out and we'll see what happens after that. There's no way they're just going to let her go free. So there must be other people around there that do eventually like take control of that situation. Okay, skip over a few pages and then we get Sokka talking to Aang. Tough day, huh? Yeah. The last time we were in this area, Spirit was threatening the humans who lived here. I chose to protect the humans. There was a divide between humans and spirits. I wasn't able to bridge that divide. I failed. Now there's a divide between benders and non-benders. I'm not sure how to fix that one either. So using the rift as an example of how he failed in a way, in one way, and now he has another conflict. Sokka just says, hey, you bridged that divide with me, didn't you? You're a bender, I'm a non-bender, and we're friends. It gives you a little bit of hope, doesn't it? And he just says, yes, a little hope. I don't think that back and forth means as much as I think the writing intent behind it was trying to get across. Just because I do appreciate in a book like this that's addressing the bender non-bender issue to actually have Sokka stand up and say a little bit more about it. I think the problem is that at least part 1 and part 2 and what we see in these previews, I don't think Sokka says enough or in any enough depth to get across any sort of a real opinion on the situation. So him saying that like, oh, but you and I are friends, doesn't that give you hope? It's kind of like, yes, kind of, but their friendship or any issues between Aang and Sokka had nothing to do with being a bender and non-bender. Sokka's Master is like the only episode in Avatar that really addresses Sokka having any sort of an issue, feeling different as part of the group for being a bender, for being a non-bender in a group of mainly benders. Now, I hope in the pages that we don't get to see, a large part of the middle of the book, between about page, 25 to like 55, we don't get to see. So I'm hoping somewhere in there there's like a Sokka Suki scene that they get their opinion out as a bender, as non-benders and stuff like that. Because I just feel a scene like this, like I like the conflict for Aang of like realizing that there's all these rifts and these conflicts rising up, and he's not quite able to fully deal with them, and they're sort of mounting up now, and he's just in these constant conflicting situations. I just feel what Sokka says to him there is like, it's nice, but it doesn't really, there's no real meaning behind it, because it's just like, really, like, effectively Sokka and Aang are best friends, and Sokka's trying to say, but like, the bender non-bender has never been a thing between Aang and Sokka, so I don't know what's being said there. We skip 2 more pages, 74 and 75, and then we get what appears to be the final page of the book, though it does say 77 is another page. Maybe that's just the credits page right at the end, but this one has the end on it. So we have a port here, Cranefish Town. I also think this city needs a better name. I'll get Sokka on it right away. So we see, okay, there's Aang and Katara, there's Sokka, there's Toph. I assume that is Suki standing next to Sokka, hopefully. I get the feeling there's some sort of a little time skip that probably happens here. Just because it feels like the town is in a lot better situation here. So somewhere in these 2 pages, I think there's a little bit of a jump to get to this point. I don't exactly know what they cover, but it's interesting enough. But yeah, that's the American preview. The only other preview pages I could find are from just switching browsers, like literally just the google.ie preview that I showed you earlier on, but in Firefox instead of Chrome this time. So we get the same rough pages up here up to page 21, skipping a couple of different ones, and then we get to actually see page 26. So what's interesting is that clearly between page 22 and 26 here, page 22 to 25, there's some context given about the past of Liling, Yaling, and Ru, that they used to live in Ba Sing Se. And I don't know how much depth they go into on it, but clearly they go into it here and address, I think for Li Ling, where a lot of this hatred comes from. And it seems like a lot of that hatred is actually directed towards King Kwei for allowing Ba Sing Se to fall to the Fire Nation. And it's a pretty interesting back and forth here. Why did Ba Sing Se fall so easily to the Fire Nation? Why was it so easy for Princess Azula to infiltrate its walls and gain control of the Dai Li? Tell me why, Ru. And we see they're both sort of taken aback. They're both a bit, on edge around their mother talking about this topic. And Ru just, very meekly sort of says, because the Earth King was a non-bender. That's right, if he was a bender, he would have been able to control his agents, he would have been able to protect the city. I won't let non-benders ruin the life I've built in Cranefish Town. The way a non-bender ruined our lives in Ba Sing Se. We're staying here, we're fighting for our home. That's interesting. That's kind of getting into what I've been asking this book to do with Li Ling for like the entire thing. Give a reason, give a motive behind why she feels this way. And I think we get the core of it here in the preview. I'm so interested to see how early they went on the backstory in those few pages we didn't get to see. But we do get the next page. Ru does come back. We see her starting to get a little bit feisty here. But it wasn't the Earth King's fault we had to leave Ba Sing Se. It was the Fire Nations. They attacked us. They tried to conquer the world. And what a response here from Li Ling. This, I think, tells you sort of how far gone she is. The Fire Lord was only doing what any strong bender leader would do. He was exploiting a weakness. That's where you can really tell that, like, okay, there's a rift here that, fundamentally Ru is not going to be able to change her mother. Li Ling is, I think, just so far gone down that path of feeling benders are better than non-benders. And she clearly, I think, feels that, I suppose in a way, like, Ru isn't as good as her or Yaling. So, and then, yeah, this is it. I like the simple backgrounds, but the color sort of getting that across. You can sort of see it, the way they do it, of just like, it's kind of orangey, of where like the mixed feelings. Rue is sort of in a darker area here as she's being meek, and then it sort of builds up to the red background and her kind of finally the anger bursting out at like the resentment in a way. Is that how you see me? I'm weak because I don't have bending abilities. And the response there is very like no shock or anything like that. It's just a very blank stare of like, I'm going to assume that Li Ling probably says something that like it was a disappointment that you weren't a bender or something like that. I'm very interested to see what happens there, like especially like the father. I wonder if the father gets mentioned in this at all. I think it would be so interesting if the father was a non-bender, and then something along the way in Bossing, say him not being able to protect them as well, and her putting some of that blame in a way on like Rue for also being a non-bender. I think there's some emotional depth they can get to if they decide to focus on the family backstory enough. But anyway, so we move on. We get we cut here to page 56, and we see Toph coming down. I think I covered this one already, actually. Yeah, I told him your plans. So 57. Then we get the 3 pages we skip over, but then we get to see page 62. And so clearly, in between this scene here, Toph and Yaling about to fight, in about 3 pages, something happens. Toph ends up on the ground for some reason. That she hit the ground pretty hard, so she falls from somewhere. Sokka ends up coming in to sort of bail Toph out with the boomerang to the back of the head, and he just completely KOs Yaling here. And we get a whole bender non-bender thing here, and yeah, no problem. Toph with a little bit of a kind of blush type situation here. Punch on the arm to Sokka to show her affection, of course. That's her little character trait. So that's pretty cool. And that's the last page that we get here in these previews. It's interesting. The book, I don't think the previews have really shown anything particularly like exciting, and anything that goes against the way I felt that the book was going to go. Especially given that we've now seen a good amount of the sort of later stage of the book as well, especially sort of how it ends. I'm a little worried that the book really does just have this very limited scope. It was only ever going to be the most minor of basic introductions to this topic, bender versus non-bender, because the impression I get, given that we get to see like the conflict coming to an end to a degree in these preview pages, is that they really didn't cover the bender non-bender issue. It is just Aang is now aware of this issue, and it's has root in this town. He's going to do what he can to stop it, but did they really say much about it? I don't really feel they did, and I hope there is an exploration of that towards the middle of the book. I don't know how much time there is to do that while doing everything else that you need to do. I did notice in general not a lot of Suki in the preview pages, so I'm wondering, is there a bigger moment for her in the book? Because otherwise it feels like what was almost like the point of bringing her in, if she is purely just there because we kind of make sense for her to be here, but like especially if like they don't confirm if she's going to be sticking around or not, like it's going to be so weird that like what was going on with bringing Suki back when you never addressed why she was able to come back, why she's not a regular member of the group, why is she not Zuko's bodyguard at this point in time, those type of questions. I hope the book gives the time to that and allows Suki a bit more freedom going forward in the series. Similarly, it looks like towards the end of the book, unless something big happens in these 2 pages here, between these ones, it looks like they're not even doing much of a setup for like where's Aang gonna live if he's sticking around Cranefish Town and stuff like that. Like the name tease at the end of like getting towards Republic City, United Republic, is a nice little one to have at the end, because everyone knows what it is. Like this is obviously what it's meant to be. It just I think what this preview has done is it's made me think that like, okay, immediately part 3 is not going to blow me away. Part 3, when I read it, is only going to be a solid ending to this series and nothing more. It's not going to overly set up the next book or anything like that. So a good amount of the excitement has definitely been kind of brought down, I think, with this. And it's not that I dislike Imbalance. It's just Imbalance is just fine, in my opinion. It's just an okay book, limited in scope for what it was able to do. It was always going to be a tough decision with a book like this, where fundamentally all you are doing is setting up a Korra thing by using a full Avatar book. Because it doesn't look like unless there's a lot of stuff that happens in the pages we don't get to see, it doesn't look like they're committing a massive amount to Chief of Police Toph, getting her that police training. It doesn't look like we're setting up Aang living on Air Temple Island right now. It doesn't really look like we're setting up Suki being a different position, or the characters moving into a new path, or anything like that. So it still feels like we're in roughly still the same status quo of the series, where it's just the Team Avatar characters are still together, they're still traveling the world, not really settled anywhere, just still dealing with whatever comes up. And I think it's for reasons like that is why everyone wants their story to return to something like the Azula story, where we can just really laser focus in on a big story that's set up right there, and just commit to telling that story that is important. And if you cover it well, it can be one of the most impactful comics that you have. But again, I'm going to reserve a lot of judgment until the book actually comes out. I have a review copy on request. It's been 79 days or so now that it's been in requested. I haven't got a denial, I haven't got an approval yet. Just waiting to see when they make that decision. We've only got just about 3 or so weeks until the book actually comes out. I wonder how late they're going to leave it. I'm assuming they won't leave it any later than about 2 weeks before, until about 2 weeks before release. So realistically, they're going to have to do this within the next roughly 2 weeks, get those review copies out. So again, keep an eye on the channel. I'll let you know if I get the review copy as soon as possible, and there will be a non-spoiler review of Imbalance Part 3 as soon as that happens. But yeah, they're the preview pages. Again, link to the description to the Google preview if you want to check it out yourself. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.